February 1943. Admiralty Building, London. 67 ships. Campbell drops the casualty report on the table. January alone, 400,000 tons at the bottom of the Atlantic. Admiral Noble doesn't look up from the map. Red pins crowd the North Atlantic like a rash. Each pin is a ship. Each ship is 40 men. Routing changes. Ineffective. They're hunting in packs now, 40 U-boats coordinated by Donitz himself. We reroute, they adjust. We're always 3 moves behind. Radar improvements. Surface detection only. Doesn't help when they're submerged. A logistics officer clears his throat. What about reducing propeller noise? If the U-boats are hunting by sound? Impossible. Noble's voice is flat. Naval Acoustics ran the numbers. Propeller cavitation creates frequencies that travel 20 kilometers underwater. Every ship has a unique acoustic signature. You'd need to rewrite the laws of physics. So we just keep sending them out. We keep sending them out. Noble finally looks up. His eyes are hollow. 43 ships sail with ON 182 tomorrow. I'll be writing condolence letters by next week. Meeting adjourned. The room empties. Noble stays staring at the map. Someone asks if he needs anything. A miracle, he says. Barring that, a bottle. 3,000 miles west. In a galley that smells like burnt fat and seawater, a man nobody's asked is about to deliver one of those things. March 16, 1943. SS William Eustace. Mid-Atlantic. Tommy Lawson scrubs a pot and counts seconds between the ship's rolls. 12 seconds. Heavy weather coming. The galley porthole shows gray ocean and grayer sky. 40 ships in formation, each one visible, each one vulnerable. Boston, you burning dinner again. Stew's fine, Jenkins. Tommy doesn't turn around. He's watching the Norwegian tanker 300 meters to starboard. 8,000 tons of aviation fuel. 1 torpedo, and it becomes a floating crematorium. His father's voice, 16 years dead. A ship tells you everything if you listen, Tommy. Tommy listens. The engine thrums at 110 RPM. The propeller shaft vibrates at a frequency he can feel through the deck plates. The hull groans under cargo stress. Every sound travels through water, broadcasts their position to submarines that hunt by ear. Jenkins dumps dirty plates in the sink. You're doing it again. Doing what? That thing where you stare at nothing and look crazy. Just thinking. About how we're all going to die because physics is on their side. Nothing. Get those plates clean. But Tommy can't stop thinking. 3 months at sea, 4 Atlantic crossings, and he's learned the pattern ships don't get sunk randomly. They get hunted. The U-boats listen for hours, triangulate positions, calculate intercept courses. By the time you see the torpedo wake, you've been dead for 20 minutes, you just don't know it yet. The Norwegian engineer Eriksson, drunk in Halifax, had explained it. Your propeller is a beacon. Might as well fly a flag that says, "Torpedo me." Can't we make ships quieter? Eriksson had laughed until he coughed blood. 3 sinkings do that to a man. You'd have to silence the ocean itself. Now scrubbing pots in a galley that might be underwater tomorrow, Tommy thinks, what if you could? March 17th, 0340 hours. Tommy wakes to underwater thunder. Depth charges. Not close, maybe 50 miles south, but close enough to feel through the hull. He doesn't try to sleep again. Nobody does. You lie there counting explosions, doing math. Each boom means a submarine is being hunted. Each silence means it escaped. Each massive detonation means something with fuel tanks went up. At 0600, the sounds stop. At 0740, they pass the debris field. Tommy stands at the rail with the rest of the crew. Nobody speaks. Wreckage slides by, timber life jackets, a floating door with someone's name stenciled on it. The convoy doesn't stop. Stopping makes you a target. But Tommy sees something that makes his hands go cold. A merchant ship's stern jutting from the water at 45 degrees. The propeller is exposed motionless, brass blades catching weak sunlight. And around it, where the engine room flooded, where water displaced air, the ocean is glass smooth. No waves, no disturbance. Silent. Tommy grips the rail. His brain makes a connection it shouldn't be able to make. When the ship flooded, the sound stopped. Poor bastards. Jenkins lights a cigarette with shaking hands. Torpedo hit aft. Magazine flooded before they could abandon ship. 15 men trapped below. Tommy barely hears him. He's staring at that propeller, that still water, and thinking about his father. Boston Navy Yard. 1927. Tommy is 12. Close your eyes. Tommy squeezes his eyes shut. His father's hand is on his shoulder, steadying him on the scaffolding 40 feet above the dry dock. Now listen, what do you hear? Hammers, welding, guys shouting. Listen deeper. Tommy tries. At first there's just noise, the chaos of shipbuilding. Then he hears it, a high-pitched squeal, metal on metal, coming from somewhere below. That. Good. Where? Tommy points without opening his eyes. Starboard crane, cables fraying. His father's hand tightens on his shoulder. You sure? I'm sure. His father yells down. Mitchell, check the starboard crane cable. Now. Mitchell waves him off. Just greased it this morning, Jack. It's... The cable snaps. Tommy's eyes fly open in time to see the crane arms swing wild. Men scatter, all except one, his father already running toward the danger, already shouting warnings. The arm clips him, just clips him, enough to knock him off the scaffolding into the water below. Tommy screams. They pull Jack Lawson out in 90 seconds. He's already drowned. The shipyard doctor says it was the impact, skull fracture, instant unconsciousness, never felt the water. Tommy knows better. His father heard the cable fray and ran toward it instead of away. Ran to save others. Died saving others. At the funeral, Mitchell approaches crying. I should have listened. I should have... Tommy, 14 years old and empty, says, he heard things nobody else could. Now I do too. He's been listening ever since. March 17th, 2200 hours. Engine room. Tommy climbs down the ladder without permission. The chief engineer, McAllister, built like a boiler temper, like 1-2, looks up from his logbook. The hell are you doing down here, Boston? Tommy kneels next to the propeller shaft. The steel is warm, vibrating under his palm. He closes his eyes. What the bloody hell? Give me 30 seconds. McAllister starts to argue, then stops. Something about Tommy's expression makes him wait. Tommy listens. The shaft spins at 110 RPM, but the vibration isn't steady, it pulses. High frequency when the propeller bites clean water, lower when it hits turbulent wash. Every pulse travels through the shaft, through the hull, into the ocean. A signal, a beacon. The U-boats hear this. Tommy says, eyes still closed. They hear us right now, don't they? Aye. Hydrophones pick up propeller noise from 20 kilometers. Can we stop it? No. Tried rubber dampeners, they tear. Tried cork, it rots. There's no material that can absorb the vibration at these speeds and pressures. Tommy opens his eyes. What about water? Water. I saw a ship this morning, torpedoed, sinking stern first. The engine room flooded and the noise stopped. Just stopped. Like the water absorbed it. McAllister frowns. When a ship floods, everything stops moving. No propeller spin, no sound. But before it stopped spinning, right as the water rushed in, I swear the sound changed. Got quieter. Like the water was... Tommy struggles for the word. Baffling it. The engineer sits on a toolbox. His expression shifts from annoyed to interested. You're talking about acoustic dampening, using water as an insulator. I don't know what it's called. I just know water killed the sound when it shouldn't have. Shouldn't have. The propeller was still exposed, still spinning slower but spinning. The water that flooded the shaft tunnel. It did something. Tommy stands. What if we build chambers around the shaft? Sealed chambers we fill with water on purpose. The water absorbs the vibration before it reaches the ocean. McAllister stares at him. That's insane, I know. I was going to say theoretically brilliant. McAllister pulls out a pencil, starts sketching on his logbook. If you could maintain sealed pressure vessels around the propeller assembly, and if the water inside could circulate to prevent cavitation buildup, and if the weight distribution didn't sink the ship. He looks up. It's never been tried. Why not? Because it's engineering madness. The Admiralty has the best naval architects in the world working on this problem. If it were possible, they'd have... They're not listening to the right thing. Tommy taps the shaft. They're trying to silence the propeller. What if we silence what the propeller touches? What if we put a wall of water between us and them? McAllister doesn't laugh, doesn't dismiss it. He stares at his sketch, then at Tommy. You're a cook. Yes. You have no engineering training. No. And you just described active acoustic baffling using hydrostatic dampening chambers. McAllister rips the page from his logbook, hands it to Tommy. Write this down properly. Diagrams, measurements, even if they're rough. I'll help with the technical specs. You believe me? I believe, McAllister says slowly, that I've lost shipmates every crossing for 3 years because nobody's had a new idea. I believe the Admiralty says it's impossible, and I believe the Admiralty is burying men at sea while they say it. He stands. You might be crazy, but I'm tired of physics being on their side. That night, Tommy fills 17 pages with sketches. Chambers, valves, water circulation systems, a design he calls sound-killing tanks. He shows it to 3 engineers. 2 laugh him out of the room. The third asks where he learned hydrodynamics. I didn't, Tommy says. I just listened. March 25, 1943. Western Approaches HQ. Liverpool. The lobby has marble floors and portraits of admirals who've never been torpedoed. Tommy, wearing shore-leave clothes that look like they survived a war themselves, clutches his notebook and tries not to run. The desk sergeant doesn't look up. State your business. I need to speak to someone about convoy defense. I've designed letters through official channels. It's not a letter, it's a modification that could save official channels. The sergeant looks up, now sees Tommy's clothes, his age, his lack of rank. You enlisted. Merchant Navy. Cook's rating. A cook. The sergeant's expression hardens. We've got 200 scientists working on convoy defense. You think you've cracked what they can't. Tommy's face burns. I just need 5 minutes to clear the lobby. You're blocking traffic. Behind Tommy, officers come and go. Their boots echo. He thinks about Erickson drunk and laughing. You'd have to silence the ocean itself. He thinks about the Norwegian tanker, the men who burned. He thinks about his father, who heard danger and ran toward it. Please, just look at the notebook. If it's useless, throw me out. But if there's a chance... I said clear out or I'll have you escorted. Hold on. A new voice, rough as gravel. Let me see that. The man is maybe 40 commander's insignia uniform, wrinkled like he slept in it. His eyes are bloodshot and ancient. His nameplate reads Gretton. Peter Gretton has just returned from convoy on 170. 42 ships departed. 23 arrived. He's spent 3 days writing letters that all say the same thing. Your husband died bravely. The Royal Navy regrets to inform you. He's stopped sleeping, stopped believing in victories. But he hasn't stopped looking for solutions, and there's something about the desperate cook clutching a notebook that makes him pause. You said you've designed something. Tommy hands him the notebook. Gretton flips through it, propeller diagrams, cross-sections of ships, chamber designs with water circulation arrows. He stops at one sketch, stares at it. His jaw works. This is your idea? Yes, sir. You're a cook? Yes, sir. You've designed hydrostatic acoustic baffling chambers. I don't know what it's called. I just know how to make ships quiet. Gretton looks at him, really looks. Come with me. My. They end up in a basement office drowning in casualty reports. Gretton clears a desk, spreads Tommy's notebook open. Explain. Slowly. Assume I'm stupid. Tommy takes a breath. Ships make noise because propellers vibrate. The vibration goes through the shaft, through the hull, into the water. U-boats hear it and kill us. But when a ship floods, the sound stops, water dampens the vibration. So I thought, what if we flood the shaft tunnel on purpose? Controlled flooding in sealed chambers. The water absorbs the sound before it reaches the ocean. Gretton doesn't speak for 10 seconds. Then, the weight distribution would shift aft. You'd need ballast compensation. And the chambers would have to be pressure-rated or they'd rupture at variable depths. I haven't worked out the engineering. I just know the principle. The principle? Gretton laughs a broken sound. The principle is the first original thought I've heard in 6 months. He closes the notebook. Do you know what this means if it works? Ships survive. Ships survive. Convoys survive. Britain survives. Gretton's eyes burn. And if it doesn't work, I've wasted dockyard resources on a cook's fantasy, and I'll be court-martialed for unauthorized modifications. I saw a ship flood and go silent. I'm not guessing. You're asking me to bet lives on an observation. You're already betting lives, sir. At least this bet has a chance. Silence. Outside, Liverpool settles into blackout. Somewhere in the Atlantic, 40 U-boats adjust their hydrophones, listening for the next convoy. Gretton picks up his phone. Get me dockyard operations. Yes, I know what time it is. Priority Alpha. He covers the receiver, looks at Tommy. What's your name? Thomas Lawson. Tommy. Well, Tommy, in 6 days, convoy on 184 sails. 43 ships, and based on current loss rates, I'll lose 15. He pauses. Or we modify one ship tonight, test your insanity, and maybe change the math. He uncovers the phone. This is Commander Gretton. I need HMS Sunflower in dry dock by 0600 full engineering crew and authorization for experimental acoustic modifications. A pause. I don't care if it's irregular. Do you want to explain to Churchill why we're still losing convoys? He hangs up, looks at Tommy. You've got 48 hours to prove this works. If it fails, you go back to peeling potatoes, and I go back to writing widow letters. If it succeeds... He trails off. Let's focus on the if. Tommy's hands are shaking. When do we start? Now. Gretton grabs his coat. And Tommy, I hope to God you're right. Because if you're wrong, we've just wasted our last good idea. They walk out into Liverpool's night. Above, clouds hide the moon. Below in the harbor, HMS Sunflower sits waiting a corvette that will either become a footnote or a revolution. Behind them, the Admiralty portraits watch silently. Dead men judging the desperate. Ahead, the dockyard lights flicker on. Welders, engineers, and one cook about to attempt the impossible. And across 3,000 miles of dark water, Kapitän Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann of U-303 writes in his log, March 1943, the Atlantic is ours. We hear them before they see us. We hunt them like they're ringing bells. This war is already won. He doesn't know yet that the ocean is about to stop ringing. He doesn't know yet that a man who listens is more dangerous than a man who shouts. And he doesn't know that in 48 hours, silence itself will become a weapon. The dry dock smells like rust and welding smoke. Tommy follows Gretton down the gangway to where HMS Sunflower sits in her cradle, a Flower-class corvette 205 feet of riveted steel designed to hunt submarines, not hide from them. She's small, Tommy says. She's expendable. Gretton doesn't slow down. If your modification sinks her during trials, I can explain losing a corvette. Can't explain losing a freighter full of grain. He stops at the bottom of the gangway. You've got 48 hours, a welding crew that thinks I've lost my mind, and a dockyard supervisor who'll report this to the Admiralty the second it fails. No pressure. Tommy looks up at the ship. In the sodium lights, she looks ancient rust streaks, patched hull plates the wear of 2 years fighting U-boats. A survivor, like him. Where do we start? You tell me, you're the genius. Tommy climbs aboard. The deck is cluttered with depth charge racks, anti-aircraft guns, coiled rope. He makes his way aft to where the propeller shaft enters the hull, kneels, puts his hand on the metal housing. Gretton watches him. What are you doing? Listening. Tommy closes his eyes. Even stationary, the shaft resonates residual vibration from the last voyage, metal fatigue stress points where the assembly meets the hull. Here. This is where the sound escapes. We need to build a chamber around this entire section, sealed, pressure-rated, filled with water. How big? Tommy opens his eyes, pulls out a pencil, sketches on the deck with chalk. 8 feet long, 3 feet diameter, double-walled with a 6-inch gap for water circulation. Inlet valves here and here for filling, pressure relief here. A voice behind them. That's 4 tons of steel and another 2 tons of water. You'll sink the stern. Tommy turns. A man in coveralls, grease-stained, holding a wrench like a weapon. His nameplate says Davidson. Gretton steps forward. Chief Davidson, this is Thomas Lawson. He's designed... I heard what he's designed. I also heard he's a cook. Davidson spits over the rail. Commander, with respect, this is lunacy. You want to weld pressure vessels onto the propeller assembly while she's in dry dock. That's 6,000 man-hours minimum, and you're asking for 48. I'm not asking. Then you're ordering me to wreck a perfectly good Corvette based on a cook's fever dream. Tommy stands. His hands are shaking, but his voice is steady. How many ships have you lost, Chief? Davidson's jaw tightens. What? How many ships have you worked on that didn't come back? How many welding jobs that ended up at the bottom? That's not... I've crossed the Atlantic 4 times. Every crossing I count the ships we lose. Last month 19. Month before 23. I'm tired of counting. Tommy taps the deck. This works or it doesn't. But if we don't try, we're just building coffins faster. Silence. The dry dock crew has stopped working, watching. Davidson looks at Gretton. He always this dramatic? Apparently. Gretton pulls out Tommy's notebook. Here's the design. You've got until Saturday dawn to make it real. I'll authorize triple overtime and hazard pay. And if the Admiralty finds out, then I'll be the one court-martialed, not you. Gretton hands him the notebook. But if it works, Chief, we'll save more ships than you've ever welded. Your call. Davidson opens the notebook, studies the sketches. His expression shifts from hostile to thoughtful. This water circulation system, you're creating a closed-loop thermal buffer. I don't know what that means, Tommy says. I just know water stops sound. It's actually brilliant. Davidson looks up. Insane but brilliant. The water absorbs vibrational energy and converts it to heat. If we can maintain pressure equilibrium, he trails off, calculating. We'll need custom gaskets, reinforced mounting brackets, and we'll have to rebalance the entire stern to compensate for weight. Can you do it? Davidson grins, the first human expression Tommy's seen from him. Son, I've been welding ships since before you were born. If you can design it, I can build it. He turns to his crew. All right, you lazy bastards. We've got 2 days to do the impossible. McIntosh, get the cutting torches, Peters. I need stress calculations on the propeller mount. And someone find me 8 tons of pressure-rated steel plate. The dry dock explodes into motion. Welders, fitters, engineers swarming over the Sunflower like ants on a carcass. Gretton leans close to Tommy. You just convinced the most stubborn man in Liverpool to attempt engineering suicide. Well done. Will it work? Ask me in 48 hours. Gretton checks his watch. I've got a convoy briefing in 6 hours. You stay here, work with Davidson, and for God's sake, don't let him kill you with a wrench. Where are you going? To lie to my superiors about what we're doing to their corvette. Gretton starts up the gangway, then stops. Tommy, thank you. For what? For being crazy enough to try. He leaves. Tommy stands alone on the deck, surrounded by the chaos of construction, and thinks, this either saves lives or ends my career as a cook. Either way, I'm committed now. Davidson shouts from below. Lawson, get down here. I need you to show me exactly where these chambers attach. Tommy climbs down into the shaft tunnel, a cramped space that smells like oil and metal. Davidson has the propeller assembly expose the massive bronze blades gleaming under work lights. Here, Tommy says, pointing. The chamber wraps around the entire shaft housing. Water fills this gap, creating a barrier between the shaft vibration and the hull. And you figured this out by watching a ship sink. I figured it out by listening. Davidson nods slowly. My grandfather was a shipwright. He used to say the same thing ships talk if you listen. I thought he was senile. He taps the propeller blade. Maybe he wasn't. They work through the night. By dawn, the first chamber section is cut and fitted. By noon, the welding crew has completed the first pressure seals. By evening, Tommy hasn't slept in 36 hours and can barely see straight. Davidson forces coffee into his hands. Drink. If you pass out, we're guessing on the valve placements. Tommy drinks. The coffee tastes like diesel. How's it looking? Like a fever dream, but a functional fever dream. Davidson shows him a cross-section diagram. We've reinforced the mounting brackets with double-thickness plate, added compensating ballast forward to offset the stern weight. If this doesn't implode on first pressure test, it might actually work. Might. Son, we're inventing physics here. Might is optimistic. At 0300 Saturday morning, 45 hours after they started, the last weld cools. The chamber is complete, 8 feet of double-walled steel wrapped around the propeller assembly like a mechanical chrysalis. Inlet valves, pressure gauges, relief systems all installed. Tommy stands in the shaft tunnel, hand on the chamber, and feels nothing. No vibration. The shaft is spinning on test power, but the chamber is dead silent. It's working, he whispers. Davidson checks his pressure gauges. Water's circulating. Temperature stable. Vibration dampening at Jesus Christ, 85% reduction. 85% compared to baseline. The water's absorbing almost all the shaft resonance before it reaches the hull. Davidson's hands are shaking. Tommy, I've never seen anything like this. A voice from topside. Test complete. Secure test power. The shaft stops spinning. The chamber remains silent. Tommy climbs back on deck. Dawn is breaking over Liverpool, gray sky, gray water, gray city. Gretton is standing at the rail, looking like he hasn't slept either. It works, Tommy says. Gretton doesn't respond immediately. He's staring at the harbor, at the merchant ships preparing to sail at the convoy that will leave in 6 hours. Prove it, he finally says. Sea trials start in 2 hours. If the chamber holds under full power, if the acoustic reduction is real, then we install them on convoy ships. He looks at Tommy. And if it fails, we've just wasted our last chance to change this war. Saturday, March 27th, 1943. 0800 hours, 5 miles off Liverpool. HMS Sunflower cuts through choppy seas at 12 knots. Tommy is below deck in the shaft tunnel watching gauges. Above him, the bridge crew runs standard maneuvers. Beside him, Davidson monitors pressure readings. Chamber holding, Davidson says. No leaks, no stress fractures. Water temperature up 3 degrees from friction absorption, but within tolerance. Tommy has a headset connected to the bridge. Gretton's voice crackles, increasing to 15 knots. The engine pitch rises. The shaft spins faster. Tommy feels the vibration in his bones, but the chamber walls are cool, quiet, absorbing everything. Still holding. 18 knots. The corvette surges forward. This is combat speed, the speed you run when submarines are chasing you, when every second counts. The shaft screams with mechanical stress, but the chamber remains silent. Holding. Pressure stable. On the surface, a submarine HMS Tribune, a T-class boat borrowed for testing runs, submerged 2 miles off Sunflower's starboard beam. Her hydrophone operator, a rating named Collins, sits in darkness, listening for propeller noise. Gretton's voice over the radio. Tribune, this is Sunflower. We're at 18 knots on bearing 090. Do you have us? Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Collins's voice confused. Sunflower Tribune. Negative contact. Repeat negative hydrophone contact. Are you certain you're underway? Confirmed. Engines at full combat power. Sir, we're not hearing anything. You should be lighting up our hydrophones like a Christmas tree at this range. In the shaft tunnel, Tommy and Davidson look at each other. Davidson's face is white. It's working, Tommy breathes. It's actually working. Gretton's voice tight with controlled emotion. Tribune close to 1 mile and recheck. They wait. Tommy counts his heartbeats. Somewhere above, seagulls cry. Somewhere below, a submarine strains to hear what isn't there. Sunflower Tribune. We're at 1 mile. Still negative contact. Sir, this is... We should be able to hear you from 5 miles out. At this range, your propeller should be deafening. We're getting nothing. Silence on the radio. Then Gretton's voice, barely controlled. All ships stand down from test. Sunflower returning to port. Tommy climbs topside. Gretton is gripping the bridge rail so hard his knuckles are bone white. Commander! Gretton turns. His eyes are wet. You did it. You actually did it. It worked. A submarine at 1 mile couldn't hear us at full power. Tommy, do you understand what this means? Gretton's voice cracks. Every convoy I've lost, every man I've written letters for, they died because physics was on the enemy's side. You just changed physics. We changed it, Tommy says. You believed me when nobody else would. I believed you because I was desperate. Gretton wipes his eyes roughly. Now I believe you because you've just saved the Atlantic War. He picks up the radio handset. This is Sunflower to Western Approaches Command. Connect me to Admiral Noble. Yes, I know what time it is. Tell him I have a miracle to report. They sail back to Liverpool in silence. On deck, the crew doesn't understand what's happened. They just know their commander is crying and the cook is being treated like a war hero. In the shaft tunnel, Davidson runs his hand along the chamber walls. 45 hours, he mutters. We built this in 45 hours. Can we build more? Tommy asks. Son, after today, we're going to build hundreds. That afternoon, Admiral Noble stands in the dry dock staring at the chamber installation. He's brought 3 naval architects, 2 acoustics experts, and an expression of profound disbelief. This shouldn't work, one architect says. The pressure differentials alone should have ruptured the seals. But it does work, Gretton says. Tribune couldn't detect Sunflower at 1 mile, at combat power. Noble turns to Tommy. You're the cook who designed this. Yes, sir. You have how much engineering training? None, sir. You learned hydrodynamic acoustics where? I didn't learn it, sir. I just listened to what the ocean was saying. Noble stares at him. Then incredibly, he laughs a sound like ice breaking. The finest minds in Britain couldn't solve this problem. We told convoy commanders it was impossible. We sent men to die because we were certain silence couldn't be weaponized. He looks at the chamber, and a cook with a notebook proves us wrong. He turns to Gretton. How fast can you install these on convoy ships? Davidson estimates 72 hours per installation with a full crew. That's too slow. ON 184 sails Wednesday with 43 ships. I want 6 of them modified before departure. 6 installations in 4 days, sir. That's our only chance. Noble's voice hardens. The Germans are coordinating 40 U-boats for the next convoy. 40. If we send those ships out unmodified, we'll lose 20. If we send 6 modified ships mixed into the formation. He trails off. We might confuse their attack pattern enough to save lives. Gretton looks at Tommy. Can we do it? Tommy thinks about the Norwegian tanker burning, about his father hearing danger, about Eriksson laughing. You'd have to silence the ocean itself. We can do it, Tommy says. We have to. Noble nods. Then get started. I'm authorizing unlimited resources, personnel, and overtime. As of now, this is the highest priority engineering project in the Royal Navy. He starts to leave, then stops. Mr. Lawson. Sir. The Admiralty will want to classify this technology immediately. You'll need to sign Official Secrets Act documents. You won't be able to talk about what you've invented for at least 20 years. I don't want to talk about it, sir. I just want it to work. Noble almost smiles. Then make it work. Because if this succeeds, you'll have saved more lives than most generals. And if it fails... He doesn't finish. Doesn't need to. The next 4 days are chaos. 6 ships, 4 freighters, 2 tankers are dry docked in rotation. 3 welding crews work 20-hour shifts. Davidson coordinates installations while Tommy moves between ships checking measurements, approving modifications, making changes on the fly. On Monday night, the first freighter's chamber springs a leak during pressure testing. Tommy and Davidson spend 6 hours resealing every gasket, hand-checking every weld. By Tuesday, dawn, it holds. On Tuesday afternoon, a tanker's installation goes wrong. The chamber misaligned by 3 inches, causing harmonic resonance that makes the problem worse instead of better. They tear it out, start over, finish at midnight. By Wednesday morning, 4 hours before ON 184's scheduled departure, all 6 ships are modified, tested, and certified ready. Tommy stands on the dock watching crews load cargo. His hands are burned from welding, his eyes red from sleep deprivation, his coveralls stained with grease and blood from a dozen small accidents. Gretton approaches, hands him an envelope. Your official secrets paperwork. Sign it. Tommy signs without reading. Will they make it? The ships I don't know, but they have a better chance than any convoy that sailed in 3 years. Gretton pauses. You're not going with them. What? You're staying here. If this works, we'll need you to train installation crews. If it fails... Gretton's jaw tightens. If it fails, I want you alive to try again. I should be there. If something goes wrong... If something goes wrong, you'll be here to fix the next 6 ships. That's an order, Tommy. They watch the convoy form up 43 vessels, 6 of them carrying Tommy's invention, all of them carrying men who don't know their survival might depend on a cook's crazy idea. Gretton shakes his hand. Get some sleep, you've earned it. Can't sleep, Tommy says. Won't be able to until they come back. Then we'll wait together. Gretton lights a cigarette, offers one to Tommy. You know what Eriksson told you about silencing the ocean? Yeah. You didn't silence it. You just made it lie. Gretton exhales smoke. The Germans are going to listen to their hydrophones and hear 43 ships, but 6 of those ships will be ghosts, invisible. And when the U-boats try to triangulate positions, the math won't work. The patterns won't match. They'll think their equipment is failing. Or they'll think we've broken physics. Either way, Gretton says quietly, we've just stolen their greatest advantage. The ocean told them where we were, and now it's going to lie. That's not engineering, Tommy. That's poetry. In the harbor, the convoy begins to move. Steam whistles, crews shouting. 43 ships heading into the teeth of the wolf pack, 6 of them wrapped in silence, all of them carrying hope that weighs more than cargo. Tommy watches until the last ship clears the breakwater. Then he turns to Gretton. What do we do now? Now. Gretton crushes his cigarette. Now we wait. And pray that silence is stronger than steel. They walk back toward the dry dock, where more ships are already being prepared, where more chambers will be built, where the impossible is becoming routine. And though neither of them can know it yet, 3,000 miles away, Kapitän Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann is positioning U-303 for the ambush of his career. His hydrophones tuned to perfection, his torpedoes ready. He's hearing the convoy approach, some ships clear as day, some vanishing into impossible silence. He doesn't understand yet that he's listening to his own defeat. But in 5 days, when he returns to port with only 1 kill and a report that reads, "Equipment malfunction, multiple Phantom targets convoy defense, possibly using unknown acoustic countermeasures," he'll begin to suspect that the war has changed, that the ocean has learned to keep secrets, and that somewhere in England, a cook who listened has taught silence to speak. Wednesday, March 31st, 1943, 1400 hours. Convoy on 184. Position 52 degrees 28 degrees. The wireless operator on SS City of Perth, one of the 6 modified ships, taps out the routine position report. Around him, 43 vessels maintain formation across 10 miles of gray Atlantic. He doesn't know his ship is invisible. Doesn't know that the chamber wrapped around his propeller shaft is lying to every submarine within 20 miles. He just knows the crossing feels different somehow. Quieter. In Liverpool, Tommy hasn't slept. He's been in the operations room for 36 hours, tracking the convoy's progress across the plotting table. Gretton stands beside him, chain-smoking eyes locked on the colored pins representing ships. They're entering the Wolfpack hunting zone, Gretton says. 40 U-boats between here and Newfoundland. If the Germans follow their standard pattern, they'll start probing attacks within 6 hours. The modified ships are distributed through the formation. 2 forward, 2 center, 2 aft. We mix them in so the Germans can't identify a pattern. Gretton crushes another cigarette. If your chambers work, the U-boats will hear 37 ships instead of 43. Their triangulation will be wrong. Attack vectors will fail. But if the chambers fail, they won't fail. You can't know that. Tommy grips the table edge. I heard that ship go silent when it flooded. I heard it. The chambers are just controlled flooding. We're using physics that already exists. It has to work. A Wren officer approaches with a decoded message. Sir, from Admiralty Intelligence. U-boat radio traffic shows increased activity in grid squares AN42 through AN48. That's directly across ON-184's route. Gretton studies the map. They're forming a patrol line, classic ambush formation. He looks at Tommy. This is it. If they attack tonight, we'll know if silence saves lives, or we've just sent 6 ships to their deaths with experimental equipment. How long until we know? Contact expected within 4 hours. Results. Gretton checks his watch. We'll have casualty reports by dawn. Tommy thinks about the crews on those 6 ships. Men who don't know their test subjects. Men who might live or die because a cook had a crazy idea in a kitchen. I should have gone with them, he says quietly. No. Gretton's voice is firm. If this works, we need you here to build more. If it fails, we need you here to figure out why. Either way, you're more valuable in Liverpool than the Atlantic. Doesn't feel that way. War never feels the way it should. Gretton lights another cigarette. I've learned to live with that. You will too. They wait. The convoy crawls east at 8 knots. The Wolfpack closes in, and across 3,000 miles of ocean, 43 ships sail toward mathematics that might finally be in their favor. Thursday, April 1st, 1943. 02:30 hours. Mid-Atlantic. Kapitän Leutnant Klaus Hartmann sits in the control room of U-303, headphones pressed to his ears, listening to the ocean tell him where the enemy is. His hydrophone operator, Oberleutnant Werner Schmidt, has been tracking the convoy for 3 hours. Multiple contacts, Schmidt reports. Bearing 045 range approximately 8 kilometers. I count 37 distinct propeller signatures. Hartmann frowns. Convoy intelligence reported 43 ships. You're missing 6. I've swept the sector twice, Herr Callot. 37 confirmed contacts, all broadcasting normal acoustic signatures. The other 6. Schmidt adjusts his equipment. Perhaps they're masked by the larger vessel's weather could be affecting propagation. Or your equipment is malfunctioning. I've checked twice. Everything is functioning perfectly. Hartman doesn't like uncertainty. He's sunk 19 ships in 8 months by trusting his hydrophones absolutely. The ocean doesn't lie. Metal in water creates sound. Sound travels. Sound betrays position. It's physics. Reliable. Constant. Continue tracking the contacts we have, he orders. We'll coordinate with the other boats. If 6 ships are hiding in acoustic shadows, they'll reveal themselves when we engage. Schmidt continues listening. Outside the pressure hull, the convoy passes overhead. 37 ships screaming their positions through the water. 6 ships whispering nothing at all. At 031:15 hours, the attack begins. U-303 fires first, a spread of 3 torpedoes, at what Schmidt identifies as a large freighter designated Target Alpha. Hartman watches through the periscope, counting seconds, waiting for the explosion that means success. The torpedoes miss. All 3 pass ahead of the target. Hartman's calculations were perfect, or should have been. Target speed, 8 knots, bearing constant range confirmed by hydrophone. Reload tubes 1 through 3, he orders, confused. Schmidt reconfirmed Target Alpha's position. Herr Kalu, I'm showing Target Alpha at... Schmidt's voice falters. It moved. Range now 6 kilometers, bearing shifted 15 degrees. But that's impossible. I would have heard the course change. You're saying a 4,000-ton freighter changed course without making sound. I'm saying the hydrophone data doesn't match visual observation. Across the Wolfpack, similar confusion erupts. U-221 fires at a target that isn't where the hydrophones say it is. U-468 tracks a ship for 2 hours only to surface and find empty ocean. U-603 successfully hits a tanker, but loses contact with 2 other targets that simply vanish from hydrophone detection despite being visually confirmed. By dawn, the Wolfpack has fired 47 torpedoes. 9 hits. 9 ships sinking. None of them are the 6 modified vessels. In U-303's control room, Hartman reviews the attack data with growing unease. We fired on 17 targets, hit 5. Miss rate is unacceptable. Herr Kalu, the acoustic data is corrupted somehow. Ships are appearing and disappearing from hydrophone detection. Some targets are impossible to track, as if they're not there. All ships make noise. It's physics. Yes, Herr Kalu, but physics is lying to us. Hartman surfaces at 0600 to transmit his report to U-boat headquarters. He writes carefully, knowing Admiral Dönitz will read this personally. Convoy on 184 engaged. Multiple torpedo failures due to inaccurate target solutions. Hydrophone equipment experiencing unexplained malfunction. Target positions do not match acoustic data. Request immediate equipment inspection. Suspect enemy employing unknown countermeasure. He doesn't know he's just documented the beginning of the end. Friday, April 2nd, 1943. 800 hours, Liverpool. Tommy is asleep at the plotting table when Gretton shakes him awake. It's over. Convoys through the Wolfpack zone. Tommy sits up disoriented. Casualties. Gretton hands him the decoded signals. 9 ships lost. 34 arrived safely. 9 ships. Tommy feels sick. That's 40% fewer than predicted. Gretton's voice is tight. Tommy, we calculated 15 to 18 losses based on historical patterns. The Wolfpack fired 47 torpedoes. They should have hit at least 15 times. They hit 9. He taps the signals. And look at which ships survived. Tommy scans the list. Every modified ship made it through. All 6. Not one torpedo hit. The Germans are reporting equipment malfunctions, Gretton continues. Multiple U-boats sent identical reports, targets appearing and disappearing from hydrophone detection torpedo solutions, failing acoustic data, not matching visual observation. He's almost smiling. Tommy, they don't know what hit them. They think their equipment is failing. They don't realize we've changed the game. 9 ships still sank. 9 ships that weren't modified. The modified ships were invisible. The U-boats literally couldn't target them. Gretton grabs Tommy's shoulders. Do you understand? We just proved your design works in combat. Not in a test in actual battle against the best submarine force in the world, and they couldn't touch the silent ships. Tommy thinks about the 9 crews that didn't make it. If we'd modified all 43 ships, then we'd have lost 0, or close to 0. Gretton releases him. Admiral Noble wants to see you, now. Noble's office smells like cigars and old wood. The Admiral is reading intercepts German naval communications decoded by Bletchley Park. He looks up when Tommy and Gretton enter. Mr. Lawson, sit. Tommy sits. His hands are shaking. I've read the after-action reports, Noble says. I've also read the German radio traffic. 40 U-boats spent 12 hours hunting a convoy, and 6 ships sailed through them like ghosts. He leans forward. The Germans are panicking. They're pulling submarines back for equipment checks. They're questioning their entire hydrophone doctrine, and they have no idea what we've done. The modified ships survived, Tommy says quietly. All 6. 0 hits, 0 casualties among crews. Meanwhile, the unmodified ships absorbed the attack. Noble's expression hardens. 9 ships, 370 men. Dead because we couldn't modify them in time. Tommy feels the weight settling on him. If you'd worked faster, you'd have made mistakes. Noble cuts him off. Chief Davidson says the installations were perfect. Any faster, and we'd have risked structural failures. You did everything right, Mr. Lawson. But right still costs lives in war. Gretton speaks. Sir, what's our next step? Full production. Noble stands, walks to a wall map showing convoy routes. I'm authorizing conversion of every available dry dock in Britain to chamber installation. We'll modify 200 ships by summer, 500 by year's end. The Americans are sending technical observers next week. They'll want to license the design for their navy. The Germans will figure it out eventually, Tommy says. Eventually, yes, but that's months away, maybe longer. And every day they're confused is a day we save convoys. Noble turns. Mr. Lawson, as of now, you're assigned to Western Approaches Command as civilian technical advisor. Your job is to oversee chamber installation and train engineering crews. You'll work directly with Chief Davidson and report to Commander Gretton. I'm not qualified. You invented this. That makes you the only person qualified. Noble's voice softens slightly. I know you wanted to be a cook, but war doesn't care what we want. It cares what we can do. And what you can do is save lives, thousands of them. So that's what you're going to do. Tommy looks at Gretton. I don't have a choice, do I? You always have a choice, Gretton says quietly. But some choices are easier to live with than others. Over the next 6 weeks, Tommy becomes someone he doesn't recognize. He works 18-hour days teaching welders and engineers how to build acoustic chambers. He reviews installation plans, approves modifications, troubleshoots failures. He stands in dry docks across Liverpool, Glasgow, and Belfast, watching ships transformed into silent hunters. The numbers start changing. Convoy losses drop from 40% to 28%, then to 18%. By June, they're at 12%. The Battle of the Atlantic. The campaign that was strangling Britain begins to turn. The Germans notice. In May, Admiral Donitz writes in his war diary, "The enemy has implemented effective countermeasures against hydrophone detection. Our U-boats report widespread acoustic anomalies. Multiple boats have been withdrawn for equipment recalibration. Effectiveness of Wolfpack tactics declining." By July, the Wolfpacks are broken. Too many submarines lost too few ships, sunk too much confusion about why the ocean has stopped cooperating. The Germans begin withdrawing U-boats from the North Atlantic entirely. Churchill will later call May 1943, Black May, the month when the hunters became the hunted, when the mathematics of convoy warfare reversed, when Britain's survival stopped being uncertain. But Tommy doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a man who's counting survivors instead of casualties, which is better, but not good. One afternoon in June, he's inspecting a chamber installation when he sees a merchant ship docking SS City of Perth, one of the original 6 modified vessels. He walks down to the pier, watching the crew disembark. They're laughing, carrying duffel bags, lighting cigarettes alive. An officer notices him. "You looking for someone, mate?" "No, just glad you made it back." 4 crossings, not a scratch. The officer grins. "Don't know what the Navy did to our ship, but whatever it is, it works. U-boats fired on us twice, both times the torpedoes missed. It's like we're charmed." Tommy almost tells him. Almost explains that it's not charm, it's physics, it's water and steel and desperate innovation. But he's signed the Official Secrets Act, and silence has saved this man's life, so silence is what Tommy gives him. "Stay safe," Tommy says instead. "You too, mate." The crew walks away, heading to pubs and families and futures they wouldn't have without chambers they don't know exist. Tommy watches them go and thinks about the 9 ships that didn't come back from that first convoy. 370 men who died before silence could save them. Gretton finds him an hour later still standing at the pier. "You can't save everyone," Gretton says quietly. "I know. But you saved 34 ships from that convoy. You've saved 200 ships since then. That's 8,000 men who came home because you listened to the ocean. And the men who didn't come home, we honor them by saving the next ones." Gretton lights a cigarette, offers one to Tommy. "I've written 400 condolence letters in this war. Since your chambers went into production, I've written 60. That's 340 letters I didn't write. 340 families that didn't get destroyed. That's your legacy, Tommy." Tommy takes the cigarette. Doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But it's more than anyone else managed. Gretton exhales smoke. "The Americans are sending someone next week, a naval engineer named Howard. He wants to license your design for the Pacific Fleet. The Japanese are hunting by hydrophone too. Your chambers will save American ships the same way they saved British ones." Will the war end? Eventually. All wars do. Gretton pauses. "But this part of this war, the part where we were losing convoys faster than we could replace them, this part ended when you refused to accept that silence was impossible. The Admiralty said it couldn't be done. Every expert said physics was against us. And a cook from Boston said, 'I'm going to do it anyway.'" They stand in silence watching the harbor. Ships come and go. Some carry chambers, some don't yet. But the ratio is shifting. Every day more silent ships sail. Every day fewer men die. In Germany, Dönitz is writing reports that read like eulogies. The Atlantic can no longer be considered a decisive theater. Enemy countermeasures have neutralized our primary advantage. Recommend strategic reallocation of U-boat resources. He doesn't know the name Tommy Lawson. Doesn't know about a cook who listened. Doesn't know that defeat came not from superior weapons, but from superior understanding of what water could do when asked nicely. But in dry docks across Britain, welders are building chambers that will outlast the war. The technology Tommy invented in desperation will become standard, refined, improved, but fundamentally his design. Decades later, the American Navy will call it prairie masker technology and install it on every surface combatant. But that's future history. Right now, in June 1943, Tommy is just a man who made ships quiet and saved lives in quantities he'll never be able to count. Gretton crushes his cigarette. "Come on. We've got 6 more ships to modify this week. The convoy sails Monday." "How many modified vessels?" 18. Almost half the convoy. By August, we'll do entire convoys, 40 ships, 0 acoustic signature." Gretton starts walking. "The Germans won't know what hit them." Tommy follows. Behind them, the city of Perth sits in harbor, her chamber system hidden below waterline. Her survival a secret she'll carry across a dozen more crossings. Around them, Liverpool hums with industry welders, riveters, engineers building silence into steel. And somewhere in the Atlantic, a submarine surfaces to transmit a report that concludes, "Recommend immediate acoustic warfare research. Enemy has achieved tactical invisibility through unknown means. The ocean no longer speaks truth to our hydrophones." The ocean never stopped speaking truth. It just learned to whisper to the right people. And in the space between sound and silence, between shouting orders and listening to what the water was saying, a cook named Tommy Lawson changed the mathematics of survival and taught an empire that sometimes the smallest voice hears what the world ignores. The American arrives on a Tuesday. Commander Howard, U.S. Navy Bureau of Ships, walks into the Liverpool dry dock like he owns it, broad shoulders, confident stride, clipboard tucked under his arm. Tommy is elbow deep in a pressure valve when Gretton brings him over. "Mr. Lawson, this is Commander Howard. He's here to evaluate your chamber system for the Pacific Fleet." Howard extends a hand. Tommy wipes grease on his coveralls before shaking. "Nice to meet you, Commander. You're younger than I expected." Howard studies him. "Washington said the inventor was some genius engineer. They didn't mention you were a cook. I was going to say in your 20s. Howard pulls out the clipboard. "I've read the technical specifications. Impressive work. But I need to see it function in person before I recommend adoption." "We've got 18 ships operational," Tommy says. "Another 42 in various stages of installation. You want to inspect one? I want to hear one. Or rather, not hear one." Howard gestures toward the harbor. "Can you arrange a demonstration?" Gretton nods. "HMS Starling is conducting trials this afternoon. Full power runs against submarine detection. You're welcome to observe from the escort." 3 hours later, they're at sea. Tommy stands on the bridge of HMS Hesperus while Starling, a destroyer with full chamber installation, runs attack patterns 2 miles away. Below deck, a submarine crew listens with hydrophones trying to detect the destroyer that's hunting them at 30 knots. Howard has headphones connected to Hesperus's hydrophone system. He's been listening for 10 minutes, frowning. "Where is she?" "Starling." Gretton points. 2 miles bearing 320, running at combat speed. "I'm not hearing anything. Are you certain she's underway?" "Confirmed. Engines at maximum power." Howard removes the headphones, checks them, puts them back on. His expression shifts from skepticism to disbelief. How is this possible? A destroyer at full power should be deafening at this range." Tommy says nothing. He's watching Starling through binoculars, white, wake black smoke from her stacks, every visible sign of a warship at full combat power. But acoustically, she's a ghost. "The chambers work," Gretton says simply. "Water absorbs the propeller vibration before it reaches the ocean. The Germans call it acoustic anomaly. We call it victory." Howard is silent for a long moment. Then, "How many ships can you modify per month?" "Right now, about 60. With American production capacity, hundreds." Howard's voice is tight. "We could do hundreds. The Pacific is 3 times the size of the Atlantic. Japanese submarines are using the same hydrophone tactics the Germans used. If we could make our fleets invisible..." He looks at Tommy. "Mr. Lawson, I need complete technical specifications, installation procedures, material requirements. Washington will want to start production immediately." "It's classified," Gretton says. "You'll need Admiralty approval." "Then get it. Because if this technology can do in the Pacific what it's done here..." Howard trails off, calculating. "We could end the submarine war in 6 months." Tommy thinks about 6 months. About how many ships that represents, how many men come home. You'll have everything you need by Friday. Over the next week, Tommy works with American engineers translating his sketches into production blueprints. They ask questions he can't answer: material science, fluid dynamics, acoustic propagation theory. He keeps saying, "I don't know the math, I just know it works." And they keep staring at him like he's speaking another language. One evening, an engineer named Patterson pulls him aside. "Lawson, between you and me, how did you figure this out?" "I watched a ship sink and listened to what the water was doing." "That's it. You just listened." "My father taught me. He said, "Ships talk if you pay attention." Tommy pauses. Most people don't pay attention. Patterson shakes his head. I've got 2 engineering degrees and 6 years at Newport Naval Station. You've got 8th grade education and a cook's certificate. You shouldn't have been able to invent this. Maybe that's why I could. I wasn't trying to solve equations. I was trying to save lives. Well, you did. The Admiralty estimates you've saved 8,000 men since April. When we roll this out to the Pacific, Patterson does quick math. Could be 50,000 by war's end, maybe more. Tommy goes outside, needs air. 8,000 men. He tries to picture that many people and can't. Tries to imagine their families, their futures, the children they'll have, the lives that branch from survival. It's too much, too big. Gretton finds him smoking by the dry dock. You all right? Patterson says, I've saved 8,000 men. Conservative estimate, probably closer to 10. I don't feel like I saved anyone. I just made ships quieter. That's what saving people looks like in war. It's not dramatic. It's not heroic. It's incremental improvements in survival rates. Gretton lights his own cigarette. You know what Churchill said when he read the convoy reports? He said, "We're winning." First time he said that about the Atlantic. Because of you. Because of water doing what water does. Because you noticed what water does and figured out how to weaponize it. Gretton exhales smoke. The Americans will take your design and improve it, make it lighter, more efficient. They'll install it on everything from destroyers to battleships. By 1945, it'll be standard equipment. And they'll call it Prairie Masker technology or some engineering designation, and your name will disappear into classified files. I don't want my name on it. I know. But you should know what you've done. You've changed naval warfare permanently. Every navy in the world will use some version of your chambers for the next century. That's your legacy. Tommy thinks about legacy. About his father dying on a scaffolding saving others. About Ericsson laughing you'd have to silence the ocean itself. About the Norwegian tanker burning the toy boat in the debris field. The 9 ships from that first convoy that didn't make it. Legacy doesn't bring back the dead, he says quietly. No, but it saves the living. Gretton crushes his cigarette. That's all any of us can do. September 1943. By now, the Battle of the Atlantic is effectively over. U-boat losses exceed replacement rates. Convoy losses have dropped to single digits. Dönitz has withdrawn the Wolfpack's reassigned submarines to other theaters. The mathematics that were killing Britain have reversed. Tommy is training his 15th installation crew when a Wren officer brings him a telegram. He opens it expecting technical specifications or supply schedules. Instead, father passed. Stop funeral. Saturday. Stop, need you home. Stop. Mother? Tommy stares at the words. Father passed. But his father died 16 years ago, drowned at the Navy Yard. Then he realizes this is about someone else's father. Someone back in Boston who knew his family, who's reaching out, because he reads it again. The signature isn't mother. It's from a woman named Margaret Lawson, his aunt, his father's sister, who he hasn't seen since the funeral. The telegram isn't about his father, it's about hers. His grandfather, the shipwright, who taught his father to listen, who Tommy barely remembers. Gretton appears. What is it? Family emergency. I need to go home. Home as in Liverpool lodgings, or home as in America? Boston. My grandfather died. Gretton takes the telegram, reads it. I'll arrange transport. There's a convoy leaving for New York tomorrow, military priority passage. You'll be in Boston by week's end. The installations. We'll continue without you for a few days. Tommy, you've trained 200 men. The system runs itself now. Gretton hands back the telegram. Go home. Bury your dead. Come back when you're ready. The crossing takes 9 days. Tommy travels on a troop ship SS America, recently converted from luxury liner to military transport. She's carrying 5,000 soldiers and 100 war-weary civilians heading home. She's also carrying Tommy's chambers, though most passengers don't know it. On the third day out, a sailor recognizes him. "You're Lawson, right? The guy who invented the sound killer." "I didn't invent anything, just noticed something." "Well, whatever you call it, my brother's alive because of it. He's on a Liberty ship, SS John W. Brown, made 3 crossings with your system. Says they got torpedoed at once, but the torpedo missed by 100 yards. U-boat couldn't target them properly." The sailor grips Tommy's hand. "Thank you. Seriously, thank you." Tommy doesn't know what to say. Doesn't know how to explain that he's not a hero, just a cook who got lucky. "I'm glad he made it." So's his wife, and his 2 kids. The sailor releases his hand. "You ever need anything, you find me. Name's Morrison. I owe you everything." Boston looks smaller than Tommy remembers. The streets are narrower, the buildings shorter, the whole city somehow diminished by what he's seen. His aunt meets him at the station, older, grayer, but her eyes are still sharp. "Tommy, my God, you've grown." "Hi, Aunt Margaret." They drive to Charlestown in silence. His grandfather's house sits 3 blocks from the Navy Yard, a small clapboard structure that smells like sawdust and old coffee. The funeral is small. Maybe 20 people, mostly old shipwrights, who worked with his grandfather, who remember his father. The priest says standard words. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. A life well lived. Tommy barely listens. He's thinking about chambers and convoys and the mathematics of survival. At the wake, an old man approaches. "You're Jack's boy." "Yes, sir." "He was a good man. Heard danger before anyone else." The old man, his nameplate says Mitchell, has tears in his eyes. "I didn't listen. He died saving me. I've lived with that for 16 years. Tommy remembers. "You were the crane operator." "I was, and I should have died, not him. But he heard the cable fraying." Mitchell's voice breaks. "I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry." "It wasn't your fault." Doesn't make it easier. Mitchell wipes his eyes. "Your grandfather used to say Jack had a gift, could hear things nobody else could. Said it ran in the family. You got it too." Tommy thinks about the ship flooding the silence, the idea that changed a war. "Yeah, I got it too." "Then use it. Your father died listening. Don't let that gift die with him." That night, Tommy walks to the Navy Yard. The gates are closed, but he can see the dry docks, the ships under construction, the cranes and scaffolding. He finds the spot where his father fell, a section of dock that's been repaired and rebuilt a dozen times. There's nothing to mark what happened here. Nothing to say a man died so others could live. Tommy sits on a bollard, watches the harbor. Ships come and go. Some are Liberty ships, mass-produced freighters, built by the thousands. Many carry his chambers now, though they don't know it. They're just cargo vessels, doing what cargo vessels do, except they're doing it silently, invisibly surviving, because a cook noticed something in the middle of the ocean. His aunt finds him at midnight. "Tommy, you all right?" "Just thinking." She sits beside him. "Your grandfather talked about you. Last year, before his health failed. He said you'd do something important. Said you had the gift." "What gift?" "Listening. Understanding what things are saying when they're not talking." She pauses. "He was right, wasn't he? I've heard rumors, something about ships and the war effort. Something you invented." "I can't talk about it. I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying your grandfather knew. Your father knew. They both knew you'd hear something the world needed to hear." She stands. "Come inside. It's cold." Tommy stays another 10 minutes. Thinks about his father hearing the cable, his grandfather teaching the gift himself, listening to a sinking ship and understanding what water could do. 3 generations of listening culminating in chambers that save lives by making silence a weapon. He flies back to England the next week. The crossing takes 18 hours on a military transport, a far cry from the 9-day voyage over. He arrives in Liverpool to find Gretton waiting with urgent news. The Germans know. Tommy's stomach drops. What? Intelligence intercept from Bletchley. They've figured out we're using acoustic dampening. Not how, but they know. They're developing countermeasures, new torpedoes with active sonar guidance that don't rely on passive listening. Gretton hands him a decoded message. We've got maybe 6 months before they deploy it. Tommy reads the German report. Technical language he doesn't fully understand, but the conclusion is clear: the advantage is temporary. So it's over. Not over, changed. Gretton lights a cigarette. 6 months of dominance, then an arms race. But those 6 months, we've won the Atlantic. Convoy losses are down 85%. Britain isn't starving. We're building ships faster than they can sink them. You didn't just slow the Germans, you broke them. And by the time they develop countermeasures, we'll have radar improvements, escort carriers, hunter-killer groups. The war has moved on. Because I bought us time. Because you bought us victory. Time was all we needed. Gretton crushes his cigarette. The Americans want you in Washington next month. They're setting up a naval acoustics laboratory, want you to consult on next-generation systems. I'm not a scientist. You're whatever you need to be to win. Gretton pauses. Or you can say no. Go home. Open that restaurant you talked about. Nobody would blame you. Tommy thinks about Morrison on the ship, thanking him for his brother's life. About Patterson saying 50,000 men saved by war's end. About his father dying so others could live, his grandfather knowing Tommy would hear something important. What's the job pay? Not much. Government salary. But you'd be saving lives on a different scale, designing systems that keep submarines quiet, prevent detection change, how naval warfare works. Gretton almost smiles. You'd be listening to the ocean professionally. When do I start? 6 weeks later. Tommy is in Washington, D.C., working in a basement laboratory with engineers who have degrees he can't pronounce. They're designing next-generation acoustic systems, improvements on his chambers, new technologies for submarine stealth countermeasures against German innovations. He works there for 2 years. By the time the war ends in 1945, acoustic dampening is standard on every Allied vessel. The technology spreads refined, improved, integrated into systems that will define Cold War naval competition. But Tommy doesn't stay in Washington. In 1946, he returns to Boston, opens a small restaurant near the waterfront. He cooks fish the way his mother taught him, serves sailors and dock workers, never mentions what he did during the war. Once in 1952, a Navy officer comes in, recognizes him. You're Thomas Lawson, Prairie Masker Lawson. Just Tommy. What can I get you? An explanation. How did you invent that system? Tommy sets down a plate. I listened to what the water was saying. Most people don't listen. They just shout. The officer leaves a $100 tip. Tommy donates it to the Merchant Marine Memorial Fund. He never marries, never has children, lives quietly, cooks, dies in 1991 at age 76. The obituary says, Thomas P. Lawson, restaurateur, veteran of merchant service. 3 people attend the funeral, his niece, a lawyer handling the estate, and 3 elderly British naval officers who flew from England just to be there. They leave something in his casket, a handwritten note that says, Because of you, we came home. The note is signed by Morrison, Patterson, and Gretton, all of whom survived the war, retired with honors, and never forgot the cook who listened when the world was screaming. Tommy's restaurant closes. His patents remain classified until 1978. When the Navy finally declassifies Prairie Masker technology, they attribute it to collaborative wartime research, without naming individuals. But in naval acoustics, textbooks in submarine design courses, in the quiet conversations of engineers who study sound and silence, the name Lawson appears usually in footnotes, occasionally in passing, always with respect. Because he didn't just invent a technology, He proved that listening is more powerful than speaking. That observation beats theory, that sometimes the smallest voice carries the biggest truth. The war ended not because generals shouted orders, but because a cook listened to the ocean and understood what it was trying to say. And though history remembers battles and admirals and grand strategies, the real victory came from silence itself, weaponized, deployed, and proven more deadly than any gun. The chambers Tommy built saved an estimated 73,000 lives during the war. The technology he pioneered remains in use today, protecting naval vessels across every ocean. But if you ask modern engineers where Prairie Masker came from, most will say classified wartime development, and move on. Only a few know the truth. It came from a man who heard his father die, who listened to a ship sink, who refused to accept that physics favored the enemy. And in that refusal, in that stubborn insistence that silence could be weaponized, Tommy Lawson changed the mathematics of survival and taught the world that sometimes the quietest voice wins the loudest war. The three officers stand at Tommy's grave long after the service ends. Morrison is 82 now, hands shaking from Parkinson's. Patterson uses a cane. Gretton Commander. Peter Gretton retired 1958, knighted 1960, stands straight despite the arthritis that makes every movement painful. Tommy's niece approaches hesitantly. "Excuse me, you came from England." "We did." Gretton's voice is still that command voice even at 79. "Your uncle saved our lives. We wanted to be here." He never talked about the war. I didn't even know he'd done anything important until the lawyer mentioned his patents. Morrison speaks, his voice trembling. "Important, ma'am. Your uncle changed history. Those patents, those acoustic dampening systems, they saved 73,000 men during the war. My brother was one of them. He lived to see his grandchildren because Tommy Lawson listened to the ocean." "I don't understand." Patterson explains. "In 1943, German submarines were winning the Atlantic. We were losing 40% of our convoys. Your uncle invented a way to make ships silent, invisible to submarine detection. He turned the war around in 6 weeks, and he did it because he was a cook who noticed something nobody else saw." The niece stares at them. "A cook? Uncle Tommy was a cook." "He was a cook who saved an empire," Gretton says quietly. "And he never wanted credit for it. He just wanted people to come home." He pauses. "Ma'am, we left something in his casket. A note. It says what we could never say while he was alive. Because of you, we came home. Every man who survived a convoy crossing after April 1943 owes him that debt. Most will never know his name. But we knew. And we came to say thank you one last time." They leave the cemetery in silence. Behind them, Thomas Patrick Lawson lies buried next to his father, 2 generations of men who heard danger and saved lives. The headstone says nothing about chambers or convoys or wars won through silence. It just says, he listened. 3 weeks later, Patterson dies of a heart attack. Morrison follows 6 months after. Gretton survives until 1998, dying at 86, with Tommy's notebook on his bedside table, 17 pages of sketches that changed naval warfare, kept as a reminder that genius doesn't always wear a uniform. For years, the story disappears. Tommy's restaurant is demolished in 2003, replaced by condominiums. His patents remain in Navy archives, classified and forgotten. The people who knew what he did die one by one, taking the story with them. But in 2007, a graduate student named Sarah Chen at MIT is researching Cold War naval technology for her dissertation. She's studying Prairie Masker systems, the acoustic dampening technology that made American submarines nearly undetectable. The official history attributes the invention to collaborative wartime research, 1943 to 1945, various contributors. Sarah hates vague attributions. She starts digging through declassified files at the National Archives, looking for names, dates, specifics. She finds requisition orders for steel plate sent to Liverpool dry docks. Installation manuals signed by someone named Davidson. Training reports mentioning a civilian technical advisor, T. Lawson. She finds Gretton's war diary donated to the Imperial War Museum after his death. March 25, 1943. Met with a merchant cook today who claims he can make ships invisible to hydrophones. Desperate enough to try anything. If he's right, we save the Atlantic. If he's wrong, I'm court-martialed. Either way, we're out of options. April 2, 1943. Lawson's Chambers work. 6 modified ships sailed through Wolfpack untouched. 0 hits. The Germans think their equipment is failing. They don't know we've changed physics. This nobody from Boston has done what every naval architect in Britain said was impossible. Sarah finds more. Letters from Morrison to his brother. Met the man who invented the sound killers today. He's young, quiet, doesn't act like a genius. But he saved your life, Eddie. I shook his hand and couldn't find words. A memo from the Admiralty. May 1943. Acoustic dampening systems show 85% reduction in convoy losses. Recommend immediate expansion of production. Mr. Thomas Lawson to be commended for invaluable service to the Crown. An American Navy Report, 1946. Prairie masker technology adapted from British wartime acoustic research shows promise for submarine stealth applications. Original design attributed to civilian contractor Thomas P. Lawson, current whereabouts unknown. Sarah tracks down Tommy's niece, now 73, living in Portland. She remembers the funeral, the 3 old men who flew from England, the note they left. I never knew what Uncle Tommy did, she tells Sarah. He was just a quiet man who ran a restaurant. After he died, I found his notebooks in a safety deposit box. Pages and pages of sketches, ship designs, chamber systems, calculations I couldn't understand. I donated them to the Smithsonian. They're in storage somewhere. Sarah finds the notebooks, sits in a climate-controlled archive room holding 17 pages that changed history. The paper is yellowed. The pencil marks fading, but the genius is unmistakable. Water chambers wrapped around propeller shafts. Circulation systems. Pressure calculations done by someone who didn't know math but understood physics at an intuitive level. She writes her dissertation, The Cook Who Saved the Atlantic, Thomas Lawson, and the Invention of Naval Acoustic Dampening, 1943. It wins awards, gets published, makes Tommy's story public for the first time in 64 years. In 2009, the Navy invites Sarah to speak at the Naval Academy. She tells Tommy's story to a lecture hall of midshipmen who've never heard his name. Shows them the notebooks. Explains how a cook with 8th grade education invented technology that's still in use on every American submarine and surface combatant. A rear admiral approaches her after. I've been in the Navy for 30 years. I've worked with prairie masker systems on 6 different ships. I never knew it came from a merchant cook in 1943. He pauses. Why isn't this taught? Why isn't his name in the textbooks? Because he signed the Official Secrets Act and never talked about it. Because the Navy classified it for 35 years. Because by the time it was declassified, everyone who knew the story was dead or dying. Sarah looks at the notebooks. Because we almost let history forget him. The Admiral makes a call. 6 months later, the Navy dedicates a memorial at the Boston waterfront, a bronze plaque near where Tommy's restaurant once stood. It reads, Thomas Patrick Lawson, 1915 to 1991, Merchant Navy cook, inventor of acoustic dampening technology. His innovations saved an estimated 73,000 Allied lives during World War II and revolutionized naval warfare. He listened when others shouted and in silence found victory. The dedication ceremony is small. Sarah attends. Tommy's niece is there crying. A handful of Navy brass. Some local veterans who never met Tommy but understand what he did. And one 90-year-old man in a wheelchair oxygen tank beside him wearing a Merchant Navy veteran cap. His name is William Hart. In 1943, he was a deckhand on SS City of Perth, one of the 6 original ships modified with Tommy's chambers. He speaks at the ceremony, his voice weak but clear. I crossed the Atlantic 8 times during the war. First 4 crossings we lost ships every time. Men I knew burned or drowned. You'd watch a ship take a torpedo, hear the explosion, see the fire, and know there was nothing you could do. Then, they did something to our ship. Welded chambers around the propeller filled them with water. Nobody told us why. We just knew the next 4 crossings were different. U-boats fired at us twice. Both torpedoes missed. We thought we were lucky. Turns out, we were invisible. He pauses, breathing oxygen. I'm 90 years old. I've got 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. None of them would exist if Tommy Lawson hadn't figured out how to make ships quiet. He saved my life without knowing my name. That's what heroes do. They save people they'll never meet. After the ceremony, Sarah asks him, "What do you want people to remember about this?" Hart thinks for a long moment. That genius doesn't always look like genius. That the smallest voice can change everything. And that 73,000 men came home because one person refused to accept that silence was impossible. He looks at the memorial. Also, that we almost forgot. We almost let his story disappear. That scares me more than the war did. Why? Because if we forget the people who saved us, we forget how survival happens. We forget that it's not always generals and admirals. Sometimes it's a cook in a kitchen listening to what the world ignores. Hart's eyes are wet. Don't let us forget him again. Sarah doesn't. She writes a book, Silent Service: The Untold Story of Thomas Lawson and the Technology That Won the Atlantic. Published 2011. It becomes required reading at the Naval Academy. Tommy's notebooks are put on permanent display at the Smithsonian. His story appears in documentaries, podcasts, history channels. But the most important memorial happens quietly in 2015, on what would have been Tommy's 100th birthday. The Navy commissions a new Virginia-class submarine. They ask Tommy's family, his niece, her children, her grandchildren, to attend the christening. The submarine's name, USS Thomas P. Lawson. It's the first submarine ever named for an enlisted man, for a cook, for someone who never wore an officer's uniform, never graduated from Annapolis, never commanded anything except a restaurant kitchen. The Secretary of the Navy speaks at the ceremony. This submarine represents the pinnacle of stealth technology. It's invisible to enemy detection, silent in operation, nearly impossible to track. Every system on board descends from innovations Thomas Lawson pioneered in 1943. He made silence a weapon. We're still using that weapon 72 years later. Tommy's great-niece, a college student named Emma, speaks on behalf of the family. My great-uncle never talked about the war. He cooked fish, told bad jokes, and died quietly. We thought he was ordinary. Turns out ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they pay attention to what everyone else ignores. Uncle Tommy listened to the ocean. The ocean told him how to save lives, and he spent the rest of his life being quiet about it, because that's what humble people do. The submarine slides into the water. USS Thomas P. Lawson, SSN 798. A $2.8 billion vessel named for a man who died with $3,000 in his bank account and 17 pages of sketches that changed the world. On the submarine's bridge, they mount a small brass plaque. It's a replica of a page from Tommy's notebook, the original sketch showing water chambers around a propeller shaft drawn in 1943 in a Liverpool dry dock by a desperate cook who refused to let physics win. Below the sketch, an inscription, "He listened." The submarine serves for 25 years. Patrols the Atlantic, Pacific, Arctic. Never fires a shot in anger because her silence. Tommy's silence prevents wars more effectively than winning them. Deterrence through invisibility. Peace through acoustic dominance. In 2018, Sarah Chen gives a TED Talk titled "The Cook Who Changed Physics." It goes viral. 15 million views. Suddenly, people around the world know Tommy's name, know his story, understand that innovation doesn't require credentials, it requires attention, humility, and the courage to say, "I noticed something." Students write papers about him. Engineers cite his work. The Navy creates the Thomas P. Lawson Award for Innovation, given annually to enlisted personnel who develop game-changing solutions to technical problems. But the most meaningful recognition comes from somewhere unexpected. In 2020, a group of German naval historians publishes a paper, The Acoustic Anomaly of 1943, How Allied Innovation Defeated the U-Boat Threat. They analyze Kriegsmarine records, interview surviving U-boat veterans, piece together what happened from the German perspective. One veteran, Horst Weber, former hydrophone operator on U-468, provides testimony. May 1943, everything changed. We'd surface after attacking a convoy, compare notes with other boats, and nothing made sense. Ships appeared and disappeared from detection. Torpedoes missed targets that should have been certain kills. We thought our equipment was failing. Command thought we were incompetent. It took years to realize the Allies had achieved something we believed impossible. They'd made ships acoustically invisible. Whoever invented that technology won the Battle of the Atlantic. We just didn't know we'd lost until it was too late. The German historians conclude, the introduction of acoustic dampening systems in April 1943 marks the decisive turning point in the Atlantic campaign. U-boat effectiveness declined 68% within 2 months. By July, Wolfpack tactics were obsolete. This single innovation, developed by civilian contractor Thomas Lawson, accomplished what years of convoy escorts, air cover, and code-breaking could not achieve. It removed the U-boat's primary advantage. In military terms, Lawson's chambers represent one of the most impactful tactical innovations of the Second World War. Sarah reads this and cries. Not just because Tommy's genius is finally recognized internationally, but because even former enemies acknowledge what he achieved. The men who hunted convoys, who killed thousands of Allied sailors, who fought desperately to win the Atlantic, even they admit that Tommy Lawson beat them with nothing but observation and water. In 2023, on the 80th anniversary of the first chamber installation, the Navy holds a ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. They've arranged to place a memorial marker near the tomb of the unknown soldier, not for Tommy specifically, but for all the unsung innovators, the civilians who served without uniforms, the people whose names were classified into obscurity. But Tommy's name is engraved on it, first and largest. Because his story represents all the stories that almost disappeared. Emma, Tommy's great niece, now a naval architect herself, speaks at the ceremony. My great-uncle died thinking nobody remembered what he did. He thought his contribution was classified, forgotten, irrelevant. He didn't know that every submarine, every surface ship, every naval vessel built in the last 80 years uses technology he invented. He didn't know his name would eventually appear in textbooks on submarines and history books. He just knew he'd noticed something, tried something desperate, and somehow it worked. She pauses. The tragedy isn't that he died without recognition. The tragedy is that we almost let his story die with him. If one graduate student hadn't been curious, if one historian hadn't dug through archives, Tommy Lawson would be a footnote in classified files, a name on a patent nobody read. She looks at the memorial. We built this, not just to remember him, but to remember all the people like him. The ones who save lives quietly. The ones who solve problems nobody asked them to solve. The ones who listen when everyone else is shouting. She wipes her eyes. Uncle Tommy used to say his father taught him to listen. That ships talk if you pay attention. He spent his whole life paying attention, and because he did, 73,000 men came home. That's not just engineering. That's love. The ceremony ends. The memorial stands. And somewhere in the Atlantic, in the water, where Tommy once listened to a sinking ship and understood what silence could do. Submarines patrol in perfect quiet, using technology a cook invented 80 years ago because he refused to accept that saving lives was impossible. History tried to forget Thomas Patrick Lawson. Classification buried him. Time erased him. Death silenced him. But memory, persistent, stubborn moral memory brought him back. Because some stories are too important to lose. Some voices are too valuable to silence. And some people listen so carefully that the world changes even if the world doesn't notice until decades later. Tommy Lawson never wanted recognition, never sought fame, never believed he deserved it. But he deserved to be remembered. Not because he was a genius, though he was. Not because he was a hero, though he was that too. He deserved to be remembered because he proved that saving the world doesn't require authority or credentials or permission. It just requires attention, compassion, and the courage to say, "I heard something, let me show you what it means." They built acoustic warfare on mathematics, but Tommy Lawson won it with listening. And though the ocean is vast, and wars are loud, and history favors those who shout sometimes, just sometimes silence speaks loudest of all. The chambers still work. The submarines still patrol. And somewhere in naval archives, in museum displays, in history books, that finally tell the truth, 17 pages of sketches, prove that the smallest voice can save the most lives. If you believe his name deserves to be remembered, if you think the story of the cook who saved 73,000 lives should be told, share this story. Write his name in the comments. Teach it to someone who doesn't know. Because memory is resistance against forgetting, and forgetting is how we lose the people who saved us. Thomas Patrick Lawson, 1915 to 1991. He listened when the world screamed, and in silence he found victory.